Prologue, a glimpse into the unknown. In a climate-controlled room deep within Yale University's Voynich rare book and manuscript library, a peculiar volume sits behind glass, its weathered vellum pages displaying strange illustrations of unknown plants, bizarre astronomical diagrams, and tiny human figures bathing in what appeared to be elaborate, interconnected green tubes. Most striking of all is the text itself, line after line of an elegant, flowing script that has defied translation for over a century. This is the Voynich Manuscript, perhaps the world's most mysterious book, a medieval codex that has confounded linguists, cryptographers, and even the most sophisticated artificial intelligence systems of the modern era. The manuscript's 240 pages contain approximately 170,000 characters, written in a system that appears nowhere else in the historical record. It has been examined by the world's foremost codebreakers, including the cryptanalysts who deciphered Nazi communications during World War II. It has been subjected to spectrographic analysis, radiocarbon dating, and statistical modeling. Yet its contents remain as impenetrable today as when it was discovered in 1912. What secrets does this enigmatic manuscript hold? Is it an elaborate hoax, a work of esoteric knowledge, or perhaps something else entirely? To understand the allure of this captivating mystery, we must trace its journey through time, a path that winds through the courts of Holy Roman emperors, the laboratories of alchemists, the collections of Jesuit scholars, and ultimately into the hands of modern researchers armed with technologies unimaginable to its original creator. This is the story of the Voynich Manuscript, the book nobody can decipher. Chapter 1. Discovery in an Italian villa. Villa Mondragone, Frascati, Italy. 1912. Wilfrid Voynich wiped the sweat from his brow as he carefully examined another dusty volume from the collection. The summer heat in central Italy was stifling, particularly in the ancient stone walls of the Villa Mondragone, a Renaissance mansion nestled in the hills outside Rome. As a rare book dealer with a remarkable personal history, he had escaped Siberian exile as a young Polish revolutionary before reinventing himself as an antiquarian in London. Voynich was accustomed to unusual circumstances, but even he could not have anticipated what he would find that day. The Jesuit order had invited him to review a collection of manuscripts they were considering selling to shore up their finances. Most were typical medieval texts, theological treatises, classical works, and scientific manuscripts. But one volume stopped him cold. Unlike anything he had ever encountered, it contained bizarre illustrations of unrecognizable plants and astronomical charts that corresponded to no known constellation arrangements. Most puzzling of all was the text itself, written in an unknown script that flowed across the pages with a confidence suggesting it was no mere cipher, but a fully developed writing system. "What in God's name is this?" he whispered, carefully turning the brittle pages. Father Giuseppe Strickland, the Jesuit librarian overseeing the collection, peered over Voynich's shoulder. "Ah, that one. We know little about it, I'm afraid. It arrived in our collection centuries ago, but no one has ever determined what it contains." Voynich felt the familiar thrill of discovery. As a young man, he had risked his life smuggling revolutionary literature across Imperial Russian borders. Now, as a 47-year-old bookseller, he recognized potential treasure of a different sort. If the manuscript was authentic, and his experienced eye suggested it was, it could be an unprecedented find. "May I include this in my purchase?" he asked, striving to maintain a casual tone. Father Strickland hesitated. "It's rather odd, isn't it? I suppose so, though I doubt it has much value given no one can read it." Voynich knew better. Mystery itself had value in the rare book world. As he carefully wrapped the manuscript for transport, he had no way of knowing that this strange volume would become his legacy, forever linking his name to one of the most enduring puzzles in bibliographic history. Chapter 2. The Emperor's Alchemist. Prague Castle, Kingdom of Bohemia, 1608. The manuscript's story, however, began long before Voynich's discovery. Though the precise origin remains contested, one of the earliest documented owners was Emperor Rudolf II of Habsburg, whose court in Prague became a gathering place for astronomers, alchemists, and natural philosophers during the late 16th and early 17th centuries. Rudolf was no ordinary monarch. Melancholic and increasingly reclusive as he aged, he retreated from political affairs into his Kunstkammer, a vast wonder cabinet of curiosities that included everything from exotic animal specimens to mechanical marvels and alchemical apparatus. His passion for occult knowledge and willingness to patron those who promised to transmute base metals into gold or discover the elixir of immortality made his court a beacon for scholars of both legitimate science and questionable mysticism. On a winter evening in 1608, as snow blanketed the spires of Prague Castle, a visitor arrived seeking an audience with the emperor. Jacobus Horzicki de Tepenec, the head of Rudolf's botanical gardens and royal physician, escorted the mysterious figure through the labyrinthine corridors. "Your Majesty," Horzicki announced, "may I present John Dee, the English philosopher." The aging emperor looked up from the astrological chart he had been studying. "Dr. Dee returns to Prague. The last I heard, you had fled to England after your falling out with Edward Kelly." John Dee bowed deeply. At 81, the mathematician, astronomer, and occultist was a shadow of the commanding figure who had first visited Rudolf's court 20 years earlier. His beard was now completely white, his once robust frame bent with age. "Your Imperial Majesty honors me with your memory," Dee replied. "Indeed, my association with Kelly ended poorly, but I return not to speak of past disappointments, but to offer you an item of singular rarity." Rudolf leaned forward, interest piqued. "Show me." From a leather satchel, Dee produced a manuscript bound in simple calfskin. As Rudolf turned the pages, his eyes widened at the strange script and bizarre illustrations. "What is this tongue? It resembles no language known to me." "Therein lies its value, Your Majesty," Dee answered. "It is said to be the work of Roger Bacon, the 13th century Franciscan friar, whose knowledge of natural philosophy and alchemical arts was so profound that many believed him to possess magical powers." Rudolf studied Dee's face. "And you can decipher this text?" "I cannot," Dee admitted. "Not yet. But I believe it contains secrets of transmutation and perhaps the composition of the philosopher's stone itself. With your patronage, I could devote myself to its study." Rudolf was no fool despite his esoteric interests. "What price do you ask?" 600 ducats, Dee replied promptly. An enormous sum, enough to purchase a substantial estate. Yet Rudolf, whose passion for collecting had driven the Habsburg treasury to the brink of bankruptcy, barely hesitated. "Horzicki will examine it first," the emperor declared. "If he believes it genuine, you shall have your ducats." Whether this transaction actually occurred remains a matter of historical debate. What is known with certainty is that the manuscript bears the signature of Jacobus Horzicki de Tepenec on one of its pages, confirming it was in Prague during this period. And while modern analysis has dated the manuscript to the early 15th century, making it impossible for Roger Bacon, who died in 1294, to have authored it, the attribution to Bacon persisted for centuries. Chapter 3. The Scholar's Inheritance. Jesuit College, Rome, 1665. Athanasius Kircher, the renowned Jesuit polymath, received the package with measured curiosity. Now in his 60s, Kircher had established himself as perhaps the most famous scholar in Europe, publishing dozens of books on subjects ranging from magnetism to Egyptology, from music theory to China. His museum at the Roman College attracted visitors from across Christendom, eager to see his collection of antiquities and scientific instruments. The letter accompanying the manuscript came from Johannes Marcus Marci, a physician and rector of Prague University. Reverend and distinguished Sir, Father in Christ, this book bequeathed to me by an intimate friend, I destined for you, my very dear Athanasius, as soon as it came into my possession, for I was convinced it could be read by no one except yourself. The former owner of this book once asked your opinion by letter, copying and sending you a portion of the book from which he believed you would be able to read the remainder, but he at that time refused to send the book itself. To its deciphering he devoted unflagging toil, as is apparent from attempts of his, which I send you herewith, and he relinquished hope only with his life. But his toil was in vain, for such sphinxes as these obey no one but their master, Kircher.